Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki, Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. I'm so grateful to be in association of all of you wonderful devotees. So we're reading today from Transcendental Diary from His Grace Hari Suri Prabhu, and we're on chapter 9, Sri Dham Mayapur, and it's January the 27th, 1976. So let's begin with some prayers. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshara Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahakana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so Sri Dham Mayapur, January the 27th, 1976. This morning, Mahamaya Dasi, one of the Western ladies serving here in Mayapur, gave me a polite note requesting me to ask Srila Prabhupada a question for her. She wanted to know whether women could be allowed into the temple room during menstruation. If so, she asked, should they wear silken garments? The reason she asked was because ladies in India generally do not enter the temple during this time. I broached the subject with His Divine Grace after his morning nap. He immediately became disturbed, and without replying to my question, sent me to get Tamal Krishna Maharaj. When Tamal came in, Prabhupada asked him, "What is this?" "He is brahmachari, and he is being approached by women." I explained to Tamal Krishna what the inquiry was, and showed him the note. He then assured Srila Prabhupada that things were not what they seemed. He described the letter as very discreet and polite, having been signed the Matajis of Mayapur. Apart from that, Tamal Krishna said, Hari Shori is actually a householder. Although I wear white cloth, because I have never once made any reference to my wife, Srila Prabhupada assumed that I was a brahmachari. Prabhupada gave a diffident smile. Oh, I thought he was brahmachari, and he is being approached by some woman for this. Now I can understand, it is all right. So he gave his permission for the ladies to attend the temple functions and approved the wearing of silk. Later, they were duly informed. Prabhupada's reaction was all the more endearing, not just because of the vigilance he demonstrated in protecting his disciples' spiritual life, but also because he was completely free from any false ego in the matter. He did not become at all defensive when he saw that things were not quite what he had first thought. Rather, he showed his purity and an absence of false ego by his humble and objective response. So we're seeing here how Srila Prabhupada really valued etiquette to be followed in temples, especially in terms of keeping brahmacharis safe from the opposite gender. And so in this case, Srila Prabhupada thought that his disciple was a brahmachari and shouldn't be approached by women, but then after having found out that he's actually a householder and he is married, then it made it okay for the ladies to approach him with some questions like this. And so we're seeing how Srila Prabhupada is like a loving father to his disciples. He wanted to protect them and cultivate them nicely, and he also shows that he cared about the men and the women. So he cared about the protection of the brahmacharis in their ashram, and he also wanted that the girls could come to the temple and attend the programs in whatever condition they found themselves in. And in this way, Srila Prabhupada was very liberal. So on the one hand, he wanted that the rules and the etiquette be followed, but on the other hand, he made some adjustments and was quite liberal in his presentation of Krishna consciousness and allowed everyone to practice in whatever condition they were in. Every day I tried to give Prabhupada a really good workout during his massage. For at least 1.5 hours I rub, squeeze, and knead his body while he sits meditatively. Tamal Krishna Maharaj mentioned to me that on the day he had given Prabhupada his massage in Calcutta, he had noticed that when no one else was present, his body was very soft and supple. But as soon as a visitor entered Prabhupada became alert and his body tensed up. It is a fact. Here in Mayapur, with no visitors to speak of, he sits so relaxed and quiet that he practically seems unaware that I am massaging him at all. Several times he has inquired, when I have completed my work, whether I was finished or not. It is almost like someone taking their car into a garage for a service, going off for an hour or so, and then returning to inquire whether everything is done. Now we're on January the 28th, 1976. Srila Prabhupada is enjoying his walks in the mornings. He mentioned today that he finds it especially pleasing that he can take his full exercise without leaving our property. Because it is still a little brisk before the sun rises, he is wearing a saffron-colored cape to prevent catching a chill. And he enjoys the company of the young Gurukul students as they join him on the road to enter the temple for the deity greeting and Guru Puja. He derives a great deal of satisfaction from their enthusiastic participation in the dancing and chanting. They share a natural rapport, and he returns their affection with smiles and words of encouragement. After lunch this afternoon, Prabhupada sat at the end of the veranda, enjoying the view of the Ganga. Suddenly, loud shouts and the slam of a door broke his tranquility. He sent me to investigate. I found Tamal Krishna Maharaj sitting in his room before a plate of prasadam, clearly upset. He had just had an argument with Harikesh over who should get the remnants of Srila Prabhupada's prasadam. As I stood, Harikesh came back in and began berating him again. Several days ago, Tamal Krishna had asked Prabhupada if he could eat the extra that was cooked for him, because he found the kind of rice the devotees eat here in Mayapur too coarse for his digestion. Prabhupada had approved. However, Harikesh had previously received instructions from Srila Prabhupada while we were in Vrindavan that all his remnants could not be monopolized by his immediate servants, but should be distributed to other devotees. As cook, Harikesh resented Tamal Krishna's acquisition of all the leftovers, while Tamal Krishna argued that he was only taking what was left in the pots and not what was left on Prabhupada's plate. Thus the dispute. Tamal Krishna also complained that he should not have been interrupted while he was honoring prasadam. Prabhupada called them both onto the veranda. After hearing their arguments, he managed to resolve the issue to everyone's satisfaction. Prabhupada said that Harikesh should not have interrupted Tamal Krishna while he was eating. Respecting prasadam is a very important function, and there should be no disturbance. He said that otherwise one's appetite is lost and indigestion results. He gave his permission for Tamal Krishna to eat what was left in the pots, but also confirmed his desire that his prasadam be distributed. He told us there is absolutely no difference between what is on the plate and what is in the pot. Whether cooked for Guru or Krishna, it is all prasadam, and all just as spiritually potent. When I mentioned that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita there was a distinction made between Mahaprasadam, the remnants of the deity offering, and Mahaprasadam, which is the spiritual master's remnants, Prabhupada said the distinction was made for reference only. It is all prasadam. In the early days of ISKCON, Shruta Kirti Prabhu, when he was serving Srila Prabhupada, he didn't know how to offer bhoga to the deity and then receive prasadam back to give to his spiritual master Srila Prabhupada. So in the beginning, actually, he would just give everything to Srila Prabhupada directly instead of making an offering. And the devotees asked about this. They were asking, but Srila Prabhupada, we know all of these mantras we're supposed to chant so that we can offer our food to Krishna, but we see that they're just offering to you directly. And now we're reading the answer, which he also gave at that time, that it's not different whether you're offering to Guru or Krishna, because Guru will always offer to his spiritual master, and it goes up in disciplic succession until it reaches Krishna anyway. So it's all prasadam, all of it. And whether we're offering here behind the curtains to Shri Shri Radharanath, or if we're down there in the devotee kitchen cooking devotee breakfast and offering there to the picture of Shri Shri Radharanath, or if maybe we're at home and we're making our offering to Shri Shri Radharanath. It depends on our consciousness how Krishna reciprocates with our offering, and it all can be regarded as Mahaprasadam. And it all can actually be regarded as Mahaprasadam, because we are also offering prayers to our spiritual masters when we're making the offering. But it all depends on consciousness, and Krishna definitely reciprocates with that. And we can see that in some pastimes, how Krishna reciprocated. There was a Brahmana, and he didn't have much paraphernalia. He was very poor. He didn't have anything to offer to Krishna, but he had the desire to. So every day he would sit with his eyes closed and he would meditate on making various preparations, and then he would actually offer that to Krishna in his mind. And one day he was preparing some sweet rice, and sweet rice, after it's prepared, mustn't be served hot. So he was touching the pot to check if it was too hot or not. And then in his meditation he actually burnt his finger. But in real life also, his finger was actually burnt. And then Lord Narayan began laughing because he was watching the whole scene. And then he said, go and fetch my devotee right now. So Krishna was reciprocating with his offering, even though he didn't even have anything. So it's really depending on our consciousness and the love with which we are making the offering. I wanted to give another example of how Krishna reciprocates, not exactly related to prasadam, but just related to how even if we have nothing, we can actually experience that reciprocation. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was telling about how he met a wonderful devotee in Vrindavan named Ganesham. And Ganesham, he was living on the banks of the Yamuna, and he had nothing. But every day he would write the name of Srimati Radharani in the sand, and he would worship that name in the sand as his deity. And then one day he was wiping away her name because he didn't want anyone to stand on her name. He understood that her name is not different from her. And as he was wiping away the sand, beneath the sand he felt something. So he started digging a little bit in the sand, and he discovered a deity of Srimati Radharani and Krishna, self-manifesting deities underneath the sand because of his desire. So if we desire to offer our food to Krishna, to Guru, wherever we may be, Shri Shri Radharanath can do anything, and they can accept that from wherever we are, and it's all Mahaprasad. And then of course the purifying effect of prasadam, although it's also it's dependent on the devotee who is cooking and offering, but it's also dependent on the devotee who is honoring that prasadam, who has the consciousness that this is being offered to my worshipful Lord, this is the mercy of Krishna, even if it's being offered behind the curtain or wherever it may be offered. So it's all dependent on that consciousness. And we're seeing here also how Srila Prabhupada is very expert in managing this dispute. And actually I read somewhere, but I couldn't find the reference for this, that when two advanced devotees dispute, we should just not get involved. But of course in this case Srila Prabhupada is their spiritual master, and he was involved because of that, and he quickly managed to sort out the whole situation to everyone's satisfaction. And then Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain that Vaishnava attitude, or what the Vaishnava attitude is in dealing with one another, and that's one of humility. He gave the example of the pilgrims that come here to Mayapur. As one man comes along the road, another tries to touch his feet. The former shies away from being so honored because he is thinking, I am not a Vaishnava, I am just an ordinary man. I am simply trying my best to become a Vaishnava. On the other hand, the person who is touching his feet is thinking that unless he gets the dust of a Vaishnava on his head, he will not be able to advance. It is true, unless we get the dust of the Vaishnava on our heads, we're not able to advance. And Prabhupada is just pointing out that this should be the culture of a Vaishnava community, that everyone is thinking, I'm not a Vaishnava, but I should get the dust of the feet of the other Vaishnavas. And that's a culture of humility. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. And Prahlad Maharaj, he also says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that unless one accepts the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee who is free from all material contamination, one cannot enter into the devotional service of the Lord. And also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 23, it says, the person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. So these bodies are useless unless we can actually get the dust from the lotus feet of a devotee, and we won't be able to make any advancement unless we do that. But we must also understand what it means to get the dust from the lotus feet of a devotee. it's not just a matter of actually touching their feet. It's a matter of, in your heart, accepting that this is a person whose instruction I can accept as my life and soul. That's what it means to accept the dust from the lotus feet of a devotee. And I could think of an example of someone who seemed to be a very unlikely candidate for devotional service, but just by getting the dust from the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, actually physically touching his feet and also following his instructions, he became so advanced. An example I was thinking of was Pigpen, which we've heard about a few times. Such a nice example. Pigpen was living outside in the streets of Paris, and was it Paris or France? One of those, somewhere there. And the devotees, they would go for walks with Srila Prabhupada, and they would see Pigpen there, a very disheveled person, intoxicated, he smelled bad, he couldn't even speak, not one word. And the devotees, they walked past Pigpen, and one day Pigpen tried to jump and grab Srila Prabhupada's feet, which was interesting because Pigpen doesn't know anything about Vaishnava culture, but perhaps from previous lives he had some agyata sukriti, unknown pious credit in devotional service. So he tried to touch Srila Prabhupada's feet, and the devotee said, no, Pigpen, we don't even get a chance to touch Prabhupada's feet, you can't do that. And so he didn't. But when the devotees returned to the temple, they saw that the door was open, and they usually close it. And when they went inside, Pigpen was there, and he touched Prabhupada's feet for a long time. And Prabhupada put his hand on Pigpen's head, and he said, "It's all right, my boy, it's all right." And then after that, the devotees took Pigpen in, and he became a world-renowned book distributor and an excellent Srimad Bhagavatam class giver. So all of that by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. By touching his feet and by accepting the instructions, he was preaching, he was distributing books, and he became more and more of a wonderful Vaishnava himself, and also became the kind of person whose feet we would want to touch. Actually, Prabhupada said, this is a fact. One has to be blessed by a devotee to become a devotee. And he who is the servant of the servant of the servant, 100 times removed, he is not worse than one who directly serves the Guru. If one thinks, because I am direct servant, I am better than others, then he is not a Vaishnava. To offer one's respects to Guru and not to his disciples, this is wrong. This is not Vaishnava. One has to be humble and try to serve all Vaishnavas, not some and not others. So this is neophyte mentality, to think my spiritual life is between me and Guru, and I just need to serve Guru and that's it. No, Prabhupada is pointing out that we need to see ourselves as servants of the servants of the servant. We are also servants of our spiritual masters, other disciples. It's not just that by serving our spiritual masters we are pleasing him and making advancement, but by serving all of the Vaishnavas, his disciples, and all of the devotees who have taken shelter within Srila Prabhupada's movement and within Lord Chaitanya's movement. They are all worthy of all of our respect, and ultimately we can also see that everyone is a servant of the Lord, ultimately, although that may be covered over. So all of the people out there, even though they may be engaged in sinful activity, we are actually servants of all of them as well, and that's why we go out on Harinam Sankirtan, to bring those servants back to Krishna. We are everybody's servant, actually. We're das, anudas, anudas. We're very small servants of all of Krishna's living entities, actually. And what to speak of those devotees who are very great, what to speak of those devotees who may have some fault but who are really trying. So we should try to please our spiritual masters by respecting all of his disciples and by trying to bring all the living entities back to him. January the 29th, 1976. Prabhupada is taking his morning walk on the roof every day now and following the same daily routine. Massage at 10 a.m. on the veranda and answering letters. Lunch at 1:30 p.m. and a rest and return downstairs by 4 p.m. A short report arrived from Hansaduta, who is now back in Germany. And then Hansaduta just starts to explain that the government in Germany were harassing the devotees and threatening them, and they wanted to actually raid the temple there. And they were having some issues with the bank accounts and trying to maintain what they had in their bank accounts for the property. And even though it was such a struggle, the devotees still continued to distribute books and they still tried to continue their service. In the meantime, since he left our party, Hansaduta has been busily purchasing vehicles for the formation of an all-India village-to-village traveling Sankirtan party. 2 45-seater Mercedes buses and a van will be driven overland to India to arrive by the festival. As well as this, he has decided to introduce the program in Germany, and 2 other buses have been purchased for touring there. Hansaduta expressed his devotional sentiments in his concluding paragraph. I feel helpless in this matter and pray to Krishna to give me intelligence to combat these rascals. I know that Krishna can reverse the situation in a minute, and if he likes, I may go on struggling a whole lifetime to convince them of the value of your message without success. Still, I am thankful that by your mercy, I have been awakened to devotional service, which is the ultimate goal of life. I shall try to spread your teachings under all circumstances to everyone. Here is seeing how sweet it is that Hansaduta is completely surrendered to serving Srila Prabhupada. Even though he has so many difficulties, he's saying under all circumstances he will continue. And Srila Prabhupada sent a short reply of encouragement comparing their struggle with the fight between Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj, and to Kamsa's fight with Krishna. Prahlad must come out triumphant, he told him. So similarly, in this case, Krishna will come out triumphant without a doubt. Prabhupada also approved his plan for village preaching. So he compares this whole situation to the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, involving the demons and their devotees. The devotees are trying to preach and the demons are trying to suppress that preaching. So there's the example, Hiranyakashipu, the father of Prahlad Maharaj, who was very unhappy that Prahlad was a pure devotee preaching to all his school friends, and then Kamsa fighting with Krishna. But there is this text in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 78, which says, wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. So wherever there is Krishna and his devotee, wherever there is also Guru and their disciple, if the disciple is following nicely in disciplic succession, it means they're pleasing Krishna. It means they're following Krishna's instructions, they're following the Guru's order. Then without a doubt, they will be sheltered. They will be sheltered by Krishna. They will be sheltered by the instructions on their spiritual master, and they will be successful. Because wherever there is Krishna, there is success. And Krishna will decide what he wants, and he will allow us to be instrumental in making different projects successful, if he desires that. And we can just see what happened in Juhu, how much the devotees struggled with so many aspects just to get that land in Juhu. But because it was Krishna's desire to actually get that land, it did happen, even though it was a struggle for the devotees. For the past few days, I have been going down to the kitchen with Prabhupada's approval to learn how to cook from Harikesh. We are using Srila Prabhupada's 3-tiered cooker. Previously, Harikesh timed things so that prasadam was ready for Prabhupada immediately after he had bathed and dressed. But because he is taking his massage early now, Prabhupada has agreed to a fixed time of 1:30 p.m. for lunch. Because of his illness, Harikesh was late starting today. By the time Prabhupada was back in his room and prasadam was due, we were still cooking. Foolishly, I did not go up and inform Prabhupada the reason for the delay, although I thought of doing it. I grew increasingly uneasy as the clock ticked on to 1:35, 1:40. Instead, I kept thinking, another few minutes, and he'll be finished. Suddenly, Anakadun Dubi, the extremely lanky English devotee who sometimes stands guard at Prabhupada's floor, burst into the kitchen. Hari Shori, Prabhupada has been ringing the bell for the last 10 minutes and no one is answering. I think you had better go up. I zipped up the stairs full of anxiety and opened the door to Srila Prabhupada's room. I got down to offer my obeisances, but froze halfway as the blast of Prabhupada's anger hit me. I have never seen him so furious. He sat with his back stiff and straight. His face was flushed, and his top lip quivered as he shouted at me for being negligent. I've been ringing for 10 minutes. You didn't hear? Where have you been? Where is prasadam? I tried to explain the reason why we were late, that I was just waiting until his prasadam was ready. But the more I tried to pacify him, the more agitated he became as he rammed home his point. I don't want your prasadam. Don't bring it, you rascal. Now you sit in your room and don't go anywhere unless I call you. His anger had the right effect. Due to dullness, I had neglected my duty, which was to serve him and keep him informed about what was happening. His sharp words crashed through the cloud of ignorance covering my brain as I realized that my inattentiveness was simply Maya. I hung my head and stopped trying to defend my position. Finally, he relented a little. Now bring whatever is done. It doesn't matter, just bring whatever is there. I ran down and brought up whatever was ready. He accepted it without any further comment and with no sign of any agitation whatsoever. As easily as it had arisen, his anger had abated. After clearing his plate and wiping the desk down, I retired to my room and did not stir from there for the rest of the day. There was no personal motive in his chastisement. Whether displaying anger or soft and gentle humor, Srila Prabhupada is always on the Transcendental platform. The effect of his instructions are always the same, no matter how they are delivered. One always ends up becoming more Krishna conscious. Srila Prabhupada is mercifully showing me the proper service attitude. In the spiritual world, everyone is fully and completely aware of their duty to Krishna at all times, without even a moment's diversion. Srila Prabhupada is trying to train us to the highest standard. My false ego has taken a battering, and I am left humbled and relieved, with a deeper understanding of what real spiritual awareness is all about. So when Srila Prabhupada would become angry, he would become very angry and very scary. And it may be a bit bewildering because we think, well, here's a pure devotee, how can he become so angry? But there's this beautiful verse from the Madhya Lila, chapter 7, text 73 of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The hearts of those above common behavior are sometimes harder than a thunderbolt and sometimes softer than a flower. How can one accommodate such contradictions in great personalities? And we can understand that it's not really a contradiction for a pure devotee to become angry, or for a spiritual master to chastise his disciples, because it's his duty to correct them. And in a letter on Srimad Bhagavatam, on a morning walk in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada explains that we always have to be like a fool in front of our spiritual masters, and we have to be ready to accept that chastisement, because when they become angry or when they correct us, it's for our ultimate benefit. And Harishore is also explaining how Srila Prabhupada, he is trying to train him in such a way that he can achieve ultimate perfection, because in the spiritual world there is no inattentiveness, not even for a moment, not at all. And if we're inattentive in our service, then our spiritual master will correct us if he loves us. That correction is because he loves us. So Srila Prabhupada is showing that he loves and cares for his disciple and heavily chastises him so that he will never be negligent again. He will never be inattentive again. And then at the end of his life, he can enter the pastimes of the Lord with full rapt attention on that service, never being negligent again. This is actually mercy. This is the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. It was his duty to become angry like that for the benefit of his disciple. And so it's explained here where Srila Prabhupada was saying on the morning walk that the disciple, he has to always be ready to be chastised, and he shouldn't think that he has become perfect. There should be no point where he thinks, oh yes, now I have been chastised and now I will be perfect, and now I'm perfect. But actually thinking that he's not perfect and always understanding that he's a fool, that is perfection. Because if our spiritual master just says, oh, how wonderful you are, we won't make any adjustments, we won't make any improvements. And all of us have something that needs adjusting, something that needs improvement. So Guru will never just flatter his disciple, but he will also chastise and correct him like a loving father would to their child. January the 30th, 1976. Gopal Krishna arrived today with news from Nellore. It turns out that two sisters will not change the conditions on their gift of land under any circumstance. Srila Prabhupada decided on a radical solution to the dispute. He told him to remove the foundation stone from the property in Nellore and send it to Madras. He then sent a letter to Shravananda and Bhavabhuti, instructing them to find some land immediately, buy it and begin collecting for a temple. Gopal Krishna also reported that the contracts for the completion of the work in Bombay are now finalized, and the work is set to go ahead without delay. And then we just see there's so many examples of how Srila Prabhupada is very expert in managing what was going on within ISKCON as it was growing and developing, and devotees were trying to get land and trying to build temples, and Prabhupada personally became involved in these different aspects of management. And then Chaitya Guru has been put in charge of organizing the project of building more rooms along the northern side of the property here in Mayapur. The work is now going on vigorously. The plans have been drawn up, and already 150 men are digging the foundation. The new building will run the full length of the land, from east to west. It'll be some 1,000 feet long, half the width of the existing guest house, and with the same style of arches and eaves. What's amazing about that project in Mayapur is that when the devotees arrived there, it was very austere. There wasn't much infrastructure. And now if we go to Mayapur, who has been to Mayapur? Yeah, if we go there now, we see a huge temple, a beautiful temple. And actually it was predicted by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that once the temple has been completed there, then love of God will spread all over the world. So when is the actual opening date? Or has it... January 2024. So it's... I think portions have been opened already, right? Are there any, more portions that are going to be opened officially? Okay, so the official opening of the whole temple, the complete temple, will be apparently January 2024. So after that, we can expect a lot of changes in the whole world. We hope. Well, the predictions of our acharyas must definitely come to be fulfilled. At least it could be gradually, or it could be sooner than we think, but it will take place. So we can't even understand how fortunate we actually are that we get to see this temple being built. This temple in Mayapur, it's not an ordinary place. And this whole situation of what's transpiring, it's not ordinary. It's very, very special. Very special. People in the higher planets, in the heavenly planets, they're praying to be born on earth now, in this difficult time of Kali Yuga, just because they get to meet Prabhupada and his disciples. They get to meet Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through him and his disciples. They get to participate in the Sankirtan movement of Srila Prabhupada, of Lord Chaitanya. They get to go to the place where Lord Chaitanya was just over 500 years ago. They get to see this temple being built in Mayapur. We're so fortunate. We get to see that moment happen. We get to see this prediction become fulfilled. That is mercy. We are all so fortunate. We're so fortunate. Looking across to the building site from his balcony, Prabhupada tried to instill some sense of urgency into Chaitya Guru by stressing that he wants this all to be done by the festival. It can only be done by your mercy, Srila Prabhupada, Chaitya Guru told him. Prabhupada laughed and replied, "And if it is not done, that means I have no mercy?" January the 31st, 1976. For many months, a thief named Agarwal has been masquerading as Achyutananda Swami in several states. He's been making life members and keeping their fees. Our men only heard about him when the new members came to claim their benefits. He was eventually apprehended with stolen life membership forms, rubber stamps, and other paraphernalia. Before being handed over to the police, he pleaded for mercy. Thus, he was brought here to Mayapur to see Srila Prabhupada. He admitted to fraudulently using ISKCON's name to extort funds, but he claimed that he was truly interested in becoming a devotee. After speaking to him, Prabhupada showed great mercy. Rather than involve the police, he decided to give him a chance to reform himself. The man was to stay here in Mayapur, chant Hare Krishna, and render some service. Agarwal seemed to be serious, even accompanying Srila Prabhupada on some of his walks. Prabhupada therefore made no further reference to his nefarious activities. However, early this morning he was intercepted at the front gate. He was on his way out with his bags packed. There's another example of it's someone who was trying to be a devotee and who ended up trying to steal. It was on a train. I don't know where, but the devotees were on a train, and then one person had this tendency to steal. So when the devotees were sleeping, because he didn't want to steal from the devotees, but he had such a strong tendency, he just took their belongings and he moved them because he had to take it. So he took it, but he moved it. So sometimes a person is coming with these tendencies, and sometimes a person has an inclination to steal. But in this case, Agarwal, he had that inclination, and Srila Prabhupada still was willing to give him a chance. Even though he was stealing so much money from the movement, he was still so forgiving and wanted him to try to make spiritual progress. But it turned out that Agarwal's tendency to steal overrided his desire to practice devotional service, which may have been something real or maybe not. But at least we can see that Srila Prabhupada was so kind to him and so merciful. It's an excellent example of the term unfortunate. Although an outright criminal, Agarwal had somehow or other received the special mercy of a pure devotee of the Lord, but because of his criminal nature, he could not take advantage of it. Thus, he is now suffering the results of his mischievous deeds. Prabhupada has invited Guru Govinda Maharaj, at present in Orissa, to come to Mayapur and translate his books. Since there are some delays in accompanying the newly donated land in Bhuvaneshwar, Maharaj is living there alone without men or money, so Prabhupada felt it best that Guru Govinda come here, at least until the festival. Prabhupada continues to follow his usual daily routine. The days are quiet, with no visitors to speak of. It is satisfying to see him getting the well-deserved rest and replenishment he needs. Harikesh, however, is getting sicker each day. This morning, as I massaged Prabhupada on the veranda, he watched Harikesh slowly emerge from his room. Harikesh was pale. He hunched over as he shuffled along the veranda to the bathroom before going downstairs to begin cooking. Though it was 11 a.m., he had just got out of bed. Srila Prabhupada asked me what he plans to do. I told Prabhupada that Harikesh thinks his condition is colitis, and he feels that if he stays in India, it will only get worse. He feels that only a return to the West will enable him to get well. But while he feels this way, Harikesh just doesn't want to leave Prabhupada's service. But Prabhupada told me that one's health is primary. So we hear many times that health comes first, then sadhana, then we can practice after our health is stable enough. And then after sadhana, we have service. So our service should be an extension of our sadhana. But our first service is japa, which is a part of our sadhana. But unless we actually have good health, then that sadhana and service will also not be at its optimum. When I was in Mayapur, I wasn't eating or sleeping very much for a few days, and then I ended up fainting, and the devotees had to take care of me until my health was okay again. And the very first class I got to go to, in that class they said, we have to realize that I am not the body, okay, I am the soul, but just because I'm not the body, it doesn't mean the body, I'm not the body, but the body is the body. That's what they said. So we are not the body, but it's not scientific to think that because I'm not the body can do anything. That's not true. The material body has limitations. So we have to try to take care of our health just as much as we need to be able to continue with our service nicely. But we're also seeing how Harikesh, even though he's so sick and should be taking care of his health, he's so determined to stay in the association of Srila Prabhupada, and he's so attached to his service to Srila Prabhupada that he's even willing to neglect his health to continue that service. So there are two sides to that. Okay. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections? Raghunath Prabhu, you have anything?
You're speaking about the consciousness, it's offered, the consciousness, although it may not be good. The person who eats it may make a difference if his consciousness is elevated. But there is an incident where Prabhupada, as our Acharya, went to South America in a temple, and he normally would ask for the Mahaprasadam, and when he ate it, he said it was horrible. So it's like, because of his consciousness, he could pick up it was horrible.
Yes.
Although it was offered to the deity. Yeah. The other thing I was thinking of, sometimes, other people cook, like, maybe outsiders cook. And there's one instance where Prabhupada was, Giriraj Maharaj and others went out on Diwali day, and generally with Indian people, they make a lot of sweets on Diwali day, lots of sweets. And then they gave the devotees some, and then when they brought it, they didn't know what to do with it. And they said, I think Maharaj said, Prabhupada is next door, let's go offer it to him. And then they went and gave it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada ate it, and then they took it as prasadam. So there's different things, you could say about, there's so many points, so many nice points you made also about the anger, and it's very interesting how Prabhupada became angry in many instances, especially when prasadam was late for him, it was an issue. And like Navayogendra Swami also brought the prasadam a little late, a minute late or something, and Prabhupada was angry. And he didn't know what to do. He asked Prabhupada later, how should we respond to your anger? He said, you should be happy, because somebody cares for you,
Yes.
So yeah, that's good points you made. Thank you for all that. There's so many nice points, I was jotting them down anyway. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you for those nice points, Raghunath Prabhu. Anybody else have anything? Mother Rupa, please, if you have anything. Madhurya Karambini. No. Okay. Anyone else? Nash? Yeah.
You were mentioning about you were mentioning about how sometimes advanced devotees have arguments, and we shouldn't get involved. And I think about this nice thing from the Brahma Samhita, where by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, where he says, let me just get the exact reference. He says it very nicely. It's what the unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Lord says is all true and is independent of any consideration of unwholesome pros and cons. There is, however, the element of mystery in their verbal controversies. Those whose judgment is made of mundane stuff, being unable to enter into the spirit of the all-loving controversies among pure devotees, due to their own want of unalloyed devotion, are apt to impute to the devotees their own defects of partisanship and opposing views. So it seems like sometimes we get disturbed if we see advanced devotees arguing, but actually that's our own defect that we're projecting onto them. So yeah, I thought that was just quite interesting.
Thank you, that's such a nice point. Thank you. Full of nature.
Oh, the reference is Brahma Samhita 537.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anything? Okay. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Gaur Pranande.